This is part 2 of What If Naruto Lost His Sight. If you all enjoy this what if, then like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Start chapter. Blindsided by twice the trouble. Chapter 4. Hope you enjoy. Trouble 1. Tilde 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 tilde. You, late, Sakura yelled from behind me somewhere as Kakashi and I shunshined into the meeting place. I stiffened a wince as I tried to figure out why she was shouting so much. It was only 10 minutes. Well, you see, there was this blind man that got lost, so me and Kaka-sensei had to make sure he got to where he was going safely. We're in the middle of the forest, Shikamaru pointed out, sounding bored. He was very lost. How troublesome, he stated, barely heard underneath Sakura's, liar. If she only knew how close to the truth it was. Kakashi, I'd prefer if you saved the corrupting of your student until after the exams. The Hokage sounded almost exasperated as he spoke. At least then he'd have a fair chance of showing up on time. I'll try, Hokage-sama, but it's hard to convince a student to not mimic their role model, Kakashi said sagely. I heard the other man sigh. I mean, look at Guy and Lee. The mentioned duo started shouting each other's names as they prepared their sunset genjutsu of death, youth. At the sound of the traumatized, disgusted populace, I was suddenly a bit glad I couldn't see it. Moving on, Naruto, if you could join the others, I'll get started. I panicked for a moment, trying to come up with a good excuse. I'd rather not. And why is that? Well, they're kinda mad at me, so if I go over there, they could hurt me. There was silence after that, probably from confusion. So Kakashi decided to explain. They had to carry him back because he knocked himself out with a tree. A tree, Ino exclaimed. How the hell do you knock yourself out with a tree? It's a talent. I pretended to flip my imaginary long hair over my shoulder. And I'm not sharing. Why would anyone want to? Ino was about to continue when the Hokage cut her off. Okay, that's enough. If you feel more comfortable where you are, then you may stay. It doesn't matter much anyways. Thanks, Gigi. I heard a few people make disapproving sounds at that, but I didn't really care. Now, before we get started, let me just say that from here on out, you will not be working in teams. So when I say you have the option to drop out, your personal choice will not affect your teammates. But before we get to that, I must announce that due to the number of you that passed the second test, we are going to have to run a preliminary test as soon as I'm done. So if any of you feel as if you are not up to a one-on-one fight, then please withdraw from the exam. Kakashi nudged me as two of the other contestants dropped out. The first guy kinda sounded like the spectacles man we ran into. The second was announced to be some kid from Taki, who apparently got his leg broken out in the forest. The whole time, that poor kid's teammates were shouting at him to come back and face it like a man, or at least the feminine-sounding one was. She probably wasn't that stable of an individual, especially if she thinks her teammate can fight on a pair of crutches. You should drop too, Kakashi whispered, snapping me back to the present. You're not ready for this yet. I can do it. Naruto. I can do it, sensei. There was a disapproving silence before I spoke up again. At least let me see who my opponent is. He thought it through for a few seconds. Alright, but if I say it's too difficult, then you forfeit. Okay. I guess, but that's not going to be a problem. I can handle anyone they throw at me, Dadboyo. I could hear him chuckle as a set of double doors closed with a thud. Is there anyone else that wishes to leave? The Hokage asked. When no one spoke up, he continued, going into this long spiel about war, or war substitute or something like that. Again, I wasn't really listening, opting to try and figure out how to keep my eyes a secret. After all, Kakashi said earlier, that only a blind man, or another blind man, would be unable to see that my eyes weren't tracking. I mean, I can't keep my eyes shut forever, it would eventually get me into trouble, especially considering I doubt my opponent would like it. As I thought this, I was vaguely aware of the Hokage's speech being interrupted by Guy shouting something about saving some poor kids, flames of youth, before his eternal rival could do any more damage. It wasn't until a hand landed on my shoulder that I was shocked out of my thoughts. No need to worry, I shall make sure your flames of youth stay bright. And if I fail, all. Did you say something? I asked, unknowingly parroting my sensei's line. No, it's too late. His cool, hip attitude has already spread. Kakashi snickered as the Hokage then decided that this would be a good time to gain back search control. And now, on with the preliminaries, he announced, getting everyone's attention again. Each match will be chosen randomly by our randomizing computer. As long as it doesn't glitch again. He ended up whispering the last part to himself, making me wonder what he meant by that, and why Kakashi was chuckling. After it was announced that Sasuke and this other dude I didn't know were up first, Kakashi shunshined the pair of us somewhere else. We're on the balcony above the arena. I heard everyone else climbing up the stairs that we essentially skipped. Okay, hey, why does that computer thingy glitch? If it's such a great piece of technology, they shouldn't have a problem with it, right? He started chuckling again, making me even more curious. And why do you find it so funny? Well, you see, it was created about 16 years ago by the fourth Hokage. No, the fourth ramen stand owner. The sarcasm was practically dripping off his words. Yes, the fourth Hokage, back before he was Hokage. He was a great seal master and that thing runs entirely on seals. So? Well, there were only 3 seal users in the village, one being the fourth, another was his sensei, while the last was a close friend of his. Now, what you have to understand about this friend is that she was one hell of a prankster, as in you would be amateur in her eyes. A good amateur, but one nonetheless. Really, why haven't I heard of her? Where is she now? Unfortunately, she died the same night as the fourth. I looked towards the ground. I knew that was just a nice way of saying that it was in the Kyuubi attacked. But not without leaving a few things to be remembered by. Like what? I glanced back up towards him, curious once again. Well, for one, that computer. I gave him an odd look and he continued. When the fourth was making it, this friend decided to help him. So one night he was out on a mission, she snuck into his house and made a few adjustments. Now whenever it's used, a few unexpected pairing pop up. They never know when, but every time it does, everyone that knows about her prank has to chuckle. So not everyone knows who did it. Very few do. Then how do you know? The fourth was my sensei. I had to listen to him complain about it for months afterwards. Why are you gawking at me like that? The fourth was your sensei. Didn't I say so before? No. Ma. Anyways, I had to listen to him complain for a long time after that, especially considering neither he nor his sensei, Jiraiya, could fix it. Why not? She was from a very elite clan that specialized in sealing, he told me. I wanted to know more, all of this sounded so interesting. I was about to ask another question when I was interrupted. Here, we'll talk more on this later. Right now we should be supporting your teammate while he's fighting. He's fighting. For the past 2 minutes. Oh well, it's not like I can watch, I said quietly. Hey, won't people know if I'm not watching the fight? Good question. He sat there quietly for a moment before he spoke up again. Here, I heard him rustling through a pack before he pulled something out. Catch. I held my hand out just in time to catch whatever he threw. After further examination, I figured out it was a book. If you pretend to read it, people will think you're distracted. It's not that pervy book, is it? If I gave you one of those, we'd both get killed, whether you could read it or not, he said, sounding suspiciously seriously. So, what is it? It's from the same author as my Ika books. It's his only non-perverted book entitled, Tale of the Gutsy Ninja. I'm sure you would have read it as well eventually, if this hadn't happened. Okay, as long as it's not going to get me hit. The book itself won't, but your inattention might. Before I could reply, there was a crash followed by a loud cheer for most of the female onlookers. Let me guess, Sasuke won. I deadpanned right before they announced that I was right. Good guess. I opened the book up to the first page, feeling so bored I wished I really could read it. Now stay right there until I get back. I have to take care of something for Sasuke. And if you're called up before I get back, be smart. If it sounds like a challenge, then back out. I can take anyone. Maybe you could before. Promise me that if you come up against a strong opponent, back out. Alright, I promise. Now, no breaking your promise. After all, if you do that you'd be breaking your Nindo as well. I won't break my Nindo. Datboyo. Just making sure. I stuck my tongue out at him before focusing back on the book. I could hear him chuckle again before he poofed away. After a moment, his voice could be heard speaking on the ground level. After I heard the two of them were taken off the floor, they announced that Katsu, some guy from Taki, was versing Shino. Well, after they convinced Guy that the Flames of Youth was not a legitimate competitor, so it would not be competing against the lesser-known fire extinguisher of Search Fate. I laughed, knowing Kakashi was right about this. Whoever was the mastermind behind this was a pranking genius. If I was still pranking, I would definitely take this as a challenge. A trick this epic would be a great thing to aim for. But I had promised Gigi that I'd stop once I was a ninja, and I had. For the most part. But just for fun, I started thinking of stuff I could have done during Shino's match. Unfortunately, it was over so quickly that I had only come up with a couple. Apparently he won by sucking the chakra out of the guy until he passed out. Across the room, I heard some chick laughing hysterically. She yelled something about wondering why his name didn't assure his victory like he said it would. It took me a bit to figure out what she meant, until I remembered that the boy was named Katsu, which meant victory. The matches went relatively quickly after that. Kankuro beat the human rubber band. Sakura and Ino decided to just knock each other out instead of actually doing anything. I breathed a sigh of relief at this because the pair of them kept screeching during every match. At least now my ears could get a bit of a rest for a few matches. And if you're wondering how I knew all of this, for some reason everyone felt like commenting on the fights as they were happening. Not that I was complaining, I just thought it was weird. Unfortunately, the silence didn't last too long due to the fact that they woke up right after Tenten's humiliating defeat by Tamari. It was equally unfortunate when Sakura came over to screech, "Sorry, I meant speak to me." Naruto, why are you reading? You're supposed to be watching the matches. I winced at the shrillness of it once again. It was then that I felt a sudden urge to duck. No sooner did I do so, I feel a whoosh go over my head. Hey, you're not supposed to duck. I wouldn't need to if you didn't try to hit me. I had to fight the urge to look up at her. Instead I continued to stare at the book, trying to look preoccupied with whatever story was in it. Where did you get the book anyways? Kakashi. This time there was no warning before I got whacked upside the head for no reason. Naruto, how dare you read that smut? It's not smut, I said as I rubbed my sore head. Read the title. I flashed the cover at her before making like I was reading it again, and then turned the page for good measure. Oh, and why are you reading a book when you never willingly touched one in your life? Kakashi said to. Something about freaking Guy out. I wasn't sure what I'd do if she asked anything else. Just as she started to ask another question, I heard someone clear their throat. Yo, Sakura, I heard you had your match already. How was it? Sensei asked, effectively shutting her up. Well, it wasn't that bad. Her versus Ino. Both of them made this huge deal out of it only for it to end in a double knockout, I said, simply getting a growl from her in the process. She should be proud of herself. After all, it was a tie. More like a double loss. To Ino. So probably not. Naruto. She was about to berate me about that when Shika was announced as the winner. About time. Thought it would take forever. Well, he's a Nara. They use their mind instead of their fists, so it tends to run a little on the long side, Kakashi answered. If you insist, I said with a shrug. Alright, who's next? Well, it's not Clucky versus the log. What? Both of us asked. If the two of you stop fighting and focus on the task at hand, you would have noticed the quite humorous glitch on the randomizing computer screen. It clearly states that the next opponents are Clucky versus the Log. Sakura was silent as I almost busted a gut from laughing so hard. I struggled to get out the single questioning word. Why? Apparently she and one of the Uchihas had an argument as academy students about which was stronger, a chicken or our ever-present substitution log. It eventually evolved into what everyone liked to call Clucky versus the Log. Which side did she take? Clucky, of course. Do you think any Uchiha would know about this argument? Probably not. He wouldn't want it to be common knowledge among his clan. Would Sasuke know about it? Maybe. After all, it was his father that started it. I could feel the fox-like grin spreading across my face as I put my book down for a moment. Clucky will win. Naruto, Sasuke is unconscious in a hospital room at the moment. This means he couldn't possibly hear you. Damn, and I wanted to start that up again. I brought my book up to look at it. Is Gigi done with his hissy fit yet? I wanna know who's next. Naruto, the Hokage doesn't have hissy fits, you baka. If someone's cursing something out, it's usually called a hissy fit, right? I didn't think it changed if it was the Hokage doing the swearing. Hokage-sama would do no such thing. I can hear him swearing from here. He does look pretty upset. Kakashi backed me up. I heard Sakura take in a breath, getting ready to yell or something, when the Hokage cleared his throat. Next match please. He sounded a bit self-conscious about his outburst. I listened to the computer click as it no doubt thought through the possible selections. The clicking eventually slowed to a stop and the competitors were announced. Uzumaki Naruto versus Inuzuka Kiba. Yes, I accidentally throwing my book into the air due to my excitement. I'm pretty sure Kakashi caught it because I never heard it hit the floor. About damn time. I went to jump over the rail in front of me when a hand dropped onto my shoulder, stopping me. Naruto, I don't think you're ready for this. Oh, come on sensei. He's too strong for you. Like hell he is. He is right now. You need to forfeit. No. Naruto. No, I'm fighting Kiba and there's nothing you can do to stop me. There was a pause in the conversation before he continued. We'll see about that. End chapter 4. Start chapter 5. Blindsided by twice the trouble. Chapter 5. Hope you enjoy. Trouble 1. P.S. If you do not like the outcome of this fight, please remember that this is a fairly humorous story that can be quite ridiculous at times. Also, I thought it was probable at the time I wrote it. Tilde 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 tilde. Kakashi looked at the boy, seeing the stubborn look in his eyes, making it undoubtedly clear that there was no talking him out of it. Instead he decided to bring his student to the Hokage, knowing that if he convinced him that Naruto isn't well enough to fight, then he could pull the boy out himself. So he grabbed Naruto's arm and shunshin down to the platform below. Hokage-sama, Naruto's not fit to fight Kiba. He is still feeling the effects of the last test. He kept a strong grip on the boy's arm as he struggled. Are you sure? What specifically are these ill effects? I believe he's still suffering from a slight concussion from running into the tree. He's still very dizzy to the point he was having trouble standing only half an hour ago. You don't say. But don't you think it's a bit late to be bringing this up? The Cyclops became confused, shooting a questioning look at the still writhing boy before turning back to the Hokage. After all, he's already on the floor. The man's lone eye got wide as he looked back at the floor to see a grinning Naruto. Then he looked at the boy he had, who had just stopped fighting long enough to acquire that same grin before poofing out of existence. Begin, the proctor shouted as his student's smile widened. Kakashi looked at his student, unsure if the boy was up to this. As the two competitors taunted each other, he just hoped Naruto knew what he was doing. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Few minutes earlier. I waited for Kakashi to poof away before coming out of my hiding spot behind Choji, who was conveniently walking by at the time. Thanks man. No problem, he said, munching on his ever-present bag of chips. I reached out to where I knew the railing was, finding it first try, then hopped over it. Unfortunately, I had no idea how far down the floor was, so when my feet hit it sooner than I thought, I ended up doing a face plant into the tile floor. Don't tell me he knocked himself out again, I heard Kiba say as I lay on the ground for a moment, still stunned. Does that mean I win? I'm good, I called, climbing back to my feet. Damn. I kept Kiba's location in mind as I hurried towards the sound of our proctor coughing. Are you afraid to face me, Kiba? I asked once I turned to face him. I heard him start to say something, but I interrupted him. Who am I kidding? Of course you are. Hey Proctor, can we get this started? Eager to get you butt whooped. Yeah, right, I could defeat you blindfold. Dat boyo. Begin, the Proctor shouted over our banter. Time to put your money where your mouth is, Kiba said as I heard his feet shift on the floor, probably into a Taijutsu stance. So I did the same, not wanting to be taken by surprise. Don't know why I'd do that, I'd rather eat ramen. It was about then that I heard the sound of something that could only be him jumping, probably at me. My theory was confirmed when a fist connected with my face. Note to self, when his feet leave the ground, move, I thought as I got to my feet again. Is that all you got, dog breath? I grinned like a madman just to throw him off. Konohamaru hits harder than you. Ya know, I was going to be fair and let you think you had a fighting chance. But now I think I'm just going to finish you off right now. Good, I don't want your charity anyways. Ninja art, beast mimicry, Kiba shouted as his hands thudded to the ground, making me wonder what he was up to. Here I come, Kiba said, his voice sounding on the verge of a growl. I'm guessing it was some sort of transformation because I could hear the slightly shocked crowd commenting on how bad I was going to lose. I was just about to yell at them when I heard his feet, in his hands, leave the ground. I was trying to decide whether to dodge or to see what he got when he rammed what had to be his shoulder into my gut, making my mind up for me. I was then sent flying across the room before my reunion with the stone floor. As I struggled to get my bearing, I could hear Kiba trying to talk the Proctor into ending the match, saying that I wasn't getting up anytime soon. What really ticked me off though was that dumb Proctor was actually considering it. So I climbed to my feet, ignoring Kiba's conversation, only listening enough to get a fix on his location. Then, before he could even turn his attention back on me, I tackled him, wanting to share the ground's hospitality with my opponent. I used the momentum of the tackle to roll past him and onto my feet. I stayed crouched close to the ground, no doubt facing away from him, but it's not like it mattered. Don't underestimate me, asshole. I must have took him by surprise, if his silence had anything to say about it. Come on, are you really that weak, or are you just going easy on me? He growled at me, most likely trying to glare as well. You want no mercy, I'll give ya no mercy. Akamaru, to me. I heard small, padded feet rushing to its master's side. I stood up and turned to face him. Seriously, you're really bringing your puppy into this? I gave him a disbelieving look to tick him off even more. This puppy that's going to be your downfall. His voice clearly telling me that I was succeeding. Let's get him, Akamaru. I heard them charge at me, their feet leaving the ground for a moment before they started running. Something hit the ground in front of me, before making a poof sound. Then the air began to smell strongly of smoke, which kind of confused me. Well, until I figured out that it had to have been a smoke pellet in an attempt to obscure my vision. I almost laughed at the thought. It was soon after this that something told me to duck, so just like earlier with Sakura, I listened to this gut feeling just in time to feel his swing pass right overhead. Not a second after, I was told to move again, this time to the side. I did so right before a pair of teeth clamped together right where my arm used to be. After dodging like this a couple times, I figured out what was keeping me safe. It wasn't some sixth sense or anything, it was actually my other four senses that I normally never paid attention to in a fight. I was able to avoid his attacks so easily because, even though I couldn't see his throws coming, there were other indicators. A whisper of fabric as Kiba moved, the taste of smoke thickening or thinning as the air was disturbed, even, oddly enough, the smell of dog as Akamaru neared. It all told me exactly where the duo was, and exactly how to avoid them. Soon after this revelation they stopped attacking, opting, instead, to stand in front of me panting. I couldn't hold back a laugh this time as the smoke soon faded from my senses. How? Kiba asked over my laughter. How what? How did you avoid us? I'm a ninja, I answered condescendingly, even though I had no clue where this was going. So? Ninjas fight ninjas, I said, my mind trying desperately to come up with something fast enough to say it. Ninjas are supposed to be invisible. So fighting with only your eyes is stupid. Don't you agree? When he didn't answer, I did so for him. You should, after all you're always using your nose. How? How do I know? I smiled at his confusion. A ninja's intuition. You guessed, didn't you? Enough about that now, I believe it's my turn. I smirked evilly before crossing my index fingers. Shadow Clone Jutsu. I could tell there was something ruining what little chakra control I had, because I could feel the drain in chakra even after the 10 clones I made. Whatever that long-haired freak did to me the other day, it wasn't good and I should probably get that looked at as well. But now wasn't the time for this, I had to focus on the fight. My clones grinned before charging as one towards the enemy. Of course, none of them could see either, but it was strange. Every time Kiba and Akamaru made one poof away, it made it easier to find the pair. I thought on it for a moment before deciding to use it now and figuring out later. So I made more clones, spamming the field despite the extra chakra strain. I was going to win this fight if it was the last thing in due. I need to prove it to Sensei, and myself, that this handicap wouldn't hold me back. I lashed out where I knew they were and came into contact with something fluffy. Unsure whether it was Akamaru or just Kiba's jacket, I grabbed it. The dog yelped, causing me to smirk. I didn't particularly like hurting Kiba's ninkin, but if it helped me win the match then there was really no other choice. Surrender, Kiba, I yelled, holding the dog up by its paws. I thought they were his front paws, but there was no real way of knowing. Or what? You'll hurt my dog. Maybe. Akamaru can take care of himself. His bag rustled like he was searching for something in it. Akamaru, catch. Something flew through the air, until the dog I was holding caught it in his jaws. The canine started growling, his fur becoming spikier in my grasp. I lost my grip on him, dropping him to the floor. He darted to his master's side, right before I heard a poof of a transformation being performed. Man-beast clone. From the gasp in the audience, something happened visually that shocked the peanut gallery. I pretended to be shocked like everyone else, even though I had no idea what was so surprising. So just to be prepared, I created a bunch of clones just as a set of feet left the ground. I had them surround me like a shield as the pair of them ran my way. Something was off about their footsteps, but I couldn't place what it was. It wasn't until my clones started disappearing and I started getting vague impressions of being punched by Kiba several times that I realized what was wrong. There were no paw steps. It was 2 sets of Kiba-sized footsteps. I was surprised at this for a moment, which was just enough time for them to take out the rest of my clones and throw me into a wall. Through my shock, I could hear the cracking of cement behind me as my back exploded in pain. I had no idea how, but he was now 5 times stronger than he was before. See, this match will be over before you can even say, I give. The dog boy sounded so confident in his own words that even I was on the threshold of believing him. But just to make sure you aren't going to pop back up again. The boy went quiet, his feet shifting on the ground as I sat there, trying to get my body to start moving. Fang over fang, he shouted, and I pretty much knew I was in trouble. Even if I didn't know what that meant, I knew that if he had that much confidence in this technique, then it must be pretty powerful. It was only a couple seconds after this that I got nailed in the chest, causing several of my ribs to snap into pieces. My breath was knocked out of me, and even as I fought to get it back, I found it oddly difficult to do so. My head was spinning and all sounds were dulled. I could barely hear Kiba talking to the proctor again. But I wasn't giving up now, not after all that happened. I'd been through more today than I have in my whole life just to fight for my spot as Chunin. There was no way that I was going to let some mud take it. So before the proctor could call the match, I struggled to my feet even though I could barely breathe. Hey, what are you doing? Just give it a rest, will ya? You've already been beaten and you know it. I winced as my hearing snapped back into focus just in time for his yell. Not yet, I struggled to say. Just those two words making me cough, which, in turn, caused my chest to feel like I was being stabbed. You can barely breathe, just stop before you get seriously hurt. No, I wanted so bad to give him a long rant about how I never give up, but I just couldn't. Naruto, you're being stupid. Just give up before you die. Sakura screeched from the stands. No, not done. I started coughing again, the taste of blood flooded my mouth this time. I knew I had to end this quick before I passed out, and this was all for nothing. I put my hands in my favorite hand sign. Fine, I don't care if you give in. But there's no way I'm going to let you attack again. Fang over fang. I heard the two of them fly through the air towards me as I thought quickly. Oh, how lucky I was that they didn't find my hedged clone on the other side of the arena. So, I quickly performed a substitution with him. Though it disoriented me, it was worth it to hear them give a surprised gasp as my clone poofed out of existence soon after their attack. Lucky for me, my disorientation didn't last long after he destroyed it. I soon got a faint feeling of being hit with that Justu again, as well as knowledge concerning where I was compared to him. Shadow Clone Jutsu. I let a smirk spread across my face as their feet shuffled on the floor quickly. I made as many clones as I could, which, if I had to guess, was somewhere between 50 and 100. Not many comparatively, but not bad for someone as injured as I was. I could almost feel the duo's shock as he was surrounded by so many of me, especially since I was quite sure they had the same smirk I had. Sick 'em, I told them quietly, but they all got the message as hundreds of feet charged at one place. At first I mostly heard poofs, but the more that were taken out, the easier it was for the rest of my clones to pinpoint his exact location and start winning. It didn't take long for the poofing of disappearing clones to be replaced with that of Kiba and Akamaru being hit. And it wasn't too long after that they were knocked out of the ring and didn't get up. Time out, the proctor called. I could hear footsteps walking over to where Kiba had fallen. He was probably checking the other boys' vitals to make sure I didn't go overboard. Kiba is unconscious and therefore cannot continue the match. The winner is Uzumaki Naruto. I smiled as a cheer went up around the room. It was mostly my clones celebrating our accomplishment, but I was able to pick out a few voices cheering that I knew weren't mine. I recognized Choji, Iruka-sensei, Shikamaru to some extent, and I might have heard Hinata, but there's no way to be sure. Then for some reason I could hear the Taki girl louder than everyone shouting something like, "Now that was a fight." It was then that my clones decided that it was time to go and poofed away, leaving me with an overwhelming exhaustion. It was also about now that my body remembered the fact that it was having difficulty breathing and decided it didn't want to stand up anymore. My knees buckled and I fell forward. I readied myself to hit the ground when I was suddenly grabbed around my torso. I yelped as pain stabbed my chest again. But before I could flinch away from the arm, it moved to my shoulders, in order to sit me gently on the floor. "Nice job, Naruto," Kakashi said, obviously being the person that helped me. He sounded sort of proud. "You did very well considering." "Thanks." I tried to say more but ended up starting to cough once again. "Let's get you to a medic so you can be fixed up." "Sounds good," I rasped once I got my breath back, or at least as much of it as I could right now. His arm disappeared, but before I could fall one way or the other, I was picked up in what seemed to be the bridal style. Though his one arm was more on my shoulders to keep the pressure off my ribs. "We'll take him from here," a voice said off to my left. I felt someone try to take me. I wouldn't have really cared much if they hadn't tried to do so by touching my already hurt ribcage. I yelped again just as Kakashi took a step back and away from the other arm. That's all right, I got him. Just show me where to go. Follow the stretcher. That was all I heard before my mind decided that it was also too tired for any of this and I started to doze. I was barely aware of the fact that we had started moving or that we stopped soon after for Kakashi to speak with a few people. I'm pretty sure I completely fell asleep right then because the next thing I knew I was lying on a fluffy board, or a very uncomfortable hospital bed. For a moment, I thought I was alone, until a pair of hands, radiating some sort of heat, touched my ribs through my mesh shirt. Not knowing who this person was, I immediately panicked and tried to get away from them. It's all right, Naruto, it's just a medic. They're not going to hurt you, even if they wanted to. Kakashi's voice seemed relatively close by. I nodded in response, but I guess I still looked tense. Medic-san, can you give us a couple minutes? I'll call you in when he's less nervous. If you insist. The hands disappeared and then there were footsteps leading away from me until a door clicked shut. I relaxed knowing the man left the room. Naruto, you know they're trying to help you. They surprised me. I didn't think anyone was there. I found it a bit easier to speak, so I guess the medic already helped a bit. I figured that much. How long was I out? Only a couple minutes. Oh, okay, I was quiet for a bit, before I thought of something. What did the medic do? He only had time to keep your ribs from piercing your lungs. He didn't get near my eyes. Not in the slightest. Good, I let out the breath that I didn't know I was holding. They're going to find out, aren't they? No, they're worried about your ribs, not your eyes. I heard a faint rustle of fabric but didn't think much of it. But as for the rest of the world, I believe I've come up with an appropriate solution. Really? What? I was starting to feel tired again, and I sounded like it, even to my own ears. Heck, it barely sounded like I was asking a question at all. This was the only answer I got before he was slipped something over my head, so whatever it was, rested over my eyes. My hand went up to touch it, feeling around the edges of the object. Goggles. Yep, I could practically hear him smiling. But not just any goggles. They belonged to a very close friend of mine, my old teammate actually. He was the one that said that those who don't protect their friends are worse than trash. That's nice. I have my own, you know. Yes, but I thought you'd like these ones, he told me, happily. That, and I think he'd like the fact that they're being used again. Especially when it's by someone with such a similar nindo to his own. But they're orange. Really? Yep. The lenses are orange, so if you get your sight back you'll be seeing everything though in orange hue. Awesome. I tried to sound excited, couldn't. Go to sleep, Naruto. You need your rest. But you're safe here. No one will find out about your eyes while you sleep. Okay, the next thing in knew, I was out. End chapter. This is the end of part 2. Hope you all enjoyed, and if you did then like, comment, and subscribe for more content.